Ever wondered what tears sound like? Can a voice actually make your heart physically ache? Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, didn't just shake his hips and make teenage girls swoon. Behind the glitz, glamour, and gold lame suits was a man who understood heartbreak on a profound level. His catalog contains hidden gems that reveal a soul who knew what it meant to love and lose. Songs so raw and emotional they've been somewhat overshadowed by his bigger hits. When we think of Elvis, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, or Blue Suede Shoes might come to mind first. But the king recorded over 700 songs during his career, many of which delve into territories of heartache that can leave listeners emotional wrecks. These forgotten, heartbreak songs showed a vulnerable side of Elvis that many casual fans might not be familiar with. The fascinating thing about Elvis's heartbreak songs is how authentic they feel. Though he didn't write most of his material, he had an uncanny ability to inhabit the emotional landscape of a song. Many music historians believe this came from his own experiences with love and loss throughout his life. From his early heartbreaks to his complicated relationship with Priscilla and the many women who came and went throughout his tumultuous life. So grab some tissues and prepare for an emotional journey through 10 devastating Elvis tracks that time has somewhat forgotten but deserve to be remembered for their raw emotional power. These aren't just sad songs. They're masterclasses in heartbreak, delivered by one of music's most expressive voices. Number 1, Just Pretend. 1970. Have you ever wished you could escape reality? Just Pretend might be the most devastating fantasy ever recorded. Released on Elvis's That's the Way It Is album, this song shinks the mature Elvis voice at its most emotionally vulnerable. The premise is heartbreaking in its simplicity. A man so destroyed by his lover's departure that he suggests they both just pretend they're still together. Just pretend that we never said goodbye. Elvis sings with a mixture of desperation and resignation that can send chills down your spine. What makes this song particularly devastating is how Elvis's voice cracks at just the right moments. There's a section where the orchestration swells and Elvis practically begs, "Just pretend I never let you go." The control in his voice, the way it soars despite carrying such emotional weight, demonstrates why many consider Elvis one of the greatest vocalists of all time. Recorded during what many consider Elvis's vocal peak, Just Pretend never received the radio play or attention of his bigger hits. Yet among Elvis aficionados, it's known as one of his most emotionally resonant performances. The song represents a man at the end of his rope, willing to live in delusion rather than face the reality of lost love. Music historian Peter Gorilnik once noted that songs like Just Pretend showed Elvis at his interpretive best. He could take a lyric and make you believe he had lived every word of it. In this case, the living seems almost too real, as if we're eavesdropping on someone's most private moments of despair. The orchestration deserves special mention too. Lush strings provide a dreamlike quality that reinforces the song's theme of escape through fantasy. It's as if the music itself is trying to construct the beautiful lie that the lyrics describe. By the final notes, you're almost convinced that pretending might indeed be better than facing heartbreaking reality. Number 2, Separate Ways. 1972. Is it possible to capture the exact moment a family falls apart? Separate Ways does exactly that, making it possibly one of Elvis's most autobiographical recordings ever, though he didn't write it himself. Released in 1972, just after his separation from Priscilla, this song feels almost uncomfortably personal. All that's left is a souvenir of all the tears that we both have cried. Elvis sings, and you can practically hear his own marriage dissolving in real time through his voice. What's particularly heart-making about Separate Ways is its focus not just on the two people breaking up, but on the child caught in the middle. The lyrics address the challenge of explaining to a child why mommy and daddy are going their separate ways. Given that Elvis and Priscilla's daughter, Lisa Marie, was just 4 years old when they separated, the parallels are impossible to ignore. The song was co-written by Red West, one of Elvis's longtime friends and members of his Memphis Mafia entourage. West later claimed he wrote it specifically about Elvis's situation, making it a rare instance where Elvis was essentially singing his own story. This personal connection might explain why Elvis's performance carries such authentic pain. Elvis biographer Alana Nash has written that during this recording session, those present noted how emotionally invested Elvis seemed in the material. He wasn't just singing it, he was living it, one session musician reportedly said. The resultant track has a wounded quality that casual listeners might miss, but that dedicated fans recognize as one of Elvis's most naked emotional performances. The arrangement is relatively understated by Elvis's sometimes bombastic 1970s standards, giving center stage to the story and the voice telling it. A gentle piano and subtle strings underscore Elvis's vocals rather than competing with them. This stripped-back quality makes the heartbreak all the more palpable. There's nowhere to hide from the raw emotion. Perhaps most devastating is the song's resolution, or lack thereof. Unlike many pop songs that offer some hope or redemption, Separate Ways ends with acceptance of the permanent fracture. We'll go our separate ways, Elvis concludes, with a finality that feels like the closing of a chapter on life itself. Number 3. It Hurts Me, 1964. Can watching someone else's heartbreak be as painful as experiencing your own? It Hurts Me, a relatively obscure 1964 recording, suggests it might be even worse. This song presents a unique perspective in the heartbreak genre. Rather than lamenting his own loss, Elvis sings from the viewpoint of someone watching the woman he loves being mistreated by another man. The twist is that he's silently in love with her, making him a helpless observer to her pain. It hurts me to see her cry. Elvis sings with surprising intensity for a mid-60s recording when many of his songs were being created for his movie soundtracks. This particular track stands apart from those often lighter fare compositions, showing a depth and emotional maturity that hint at what could have been if Elvis had been given more substantial material during his Hollywood years. Many Elvis historians point to It Hurts Me as evidence that, even during his career's most commercially focused period, the authentic artist was still there, waiting for material worthy of his interpretive gifts. Elvis allegedly loved this song so much that he insisted on doing multiple takes until he felt he'd captured the emotion perfectly. The arrangement balances 1960s pop production with soulful undertones. A driving rhythm section creates tension, while Elvis's voice soars above it with controlled power. There's a moment toward the end where Elvis lets loose with a passionate "It Hurts Me" that reveals the full extent of his vocal capabilities and emotional range. What makes this song particularly devastating is its selflessness. The narrator isn't concerned with his own romantic prospects, but with the woman's well-being. "I'd rather continue to hurt inside than to see her hurt again," Elvis declares, describing a love so pure it prioritizes another's happiness above one's own desires. "It Hurts Me" peaked at only £29 on the Billboard charts, making it one of those Elvis songs that never received its due recognition. Yet among musicians and Elvis connoisseurs, it's often cited as evidence of what made Elvis special: his ability to convey complex emotions through his voice, making listeners feel every nuance of a lyric. Number 4. Tomorrow is a Long Time, 1966. Have you ever felt that time itself has turned against you after a breakup? Elvis's cover of Bob Dylan's "Tomorrow is a Long Time" captures that sensation with haunting precision. Recorded in 1966 for the Spin-Out soundtrack, but relegated to the How Great Thou Art album instead. This track represents one of Elvis's most sensitive vocal performances. The fact that Dylan himself reportedly called it his favorite cover of any of his songs speaks volumes about its quality. What makes Elvis's interpretation so devastating is its restraint. Backed by minimal acoustic instrumentation, Elvis sings with a quiet intensity that makes you feel like you're sitting alone with him in an empty room after everyone else has gone home. The vulnerability in his delivery transforms Dylan's poetic lyrics into a direct communication from one broken heart to another. "Yes, and only if she was lying by my side would I be satisfied." Elvis sings with a mixture of longing and resignation that cuts straight to the heart of anyone who's ever lain awake missing someone who's no longer there. The simplicity of the statement belies the complexity of the emotion behind it. Music critic Greil Marcus once wrote that this recording revealed the Elvis that might have been had his career taken different turns. It shows an artist capable of profound sensitivity and nuance, qualities sometimes overshadowed by his more flamboyant rock and roll persona or his Vegas-era spectacle. The song's arrangement deserves special attention for what it doesn't do. There are no dramatic swells, no orchestral flourishes, just gentle guitar, bass, and drums, providing a sparse framework for Elvis's voice. This musical restraint perfectly complements the lyrical theme of emotional emptiness following heartbreak. Perhaps most poignant is the subtle hint of Elvis's gospel background that emerges in his phrasing. There's an almost spiritual quality to his delivery, as if heartbreak has become a form of existential crisis. When he sings about time stretching endlessly before him, you can hear a man confronting not just loneliness, but mortality itself. Number 5. I've Got a Thing About You, Baby, 1973. Can a happy-sounding song hide devastating heartbreak? I've Got a Thing About You, Baby proves it's possible with its deceptively upbeat arrangement, masking lyrics of unrequited love. Recorded during the famous Stax sessions of 1973, this Tony Joe White penned track sings Elvis's ability to infuse seemingly simple pop songs with emotional depth. The bouncy piano and rhythm section create a toe-tapping backdrop that might fool casual listeners into missing the pain embedded in the lyrics. I've got a thing about you, baby, that I can't let go. Elvis sings with a mixture of joy and resignation that perfectly captures the bittersweet nature of loving someone who doesn't return your feelings. His vocal manages to convey both the thrill of love and the acceptance that it may never be fulfilled. What makes this recording particularly affecting is the contrast between Elvis's mature, somewhat weathered 1970s voice and the youthful emotion he's expressing. There's a lifetime of experience in his delivery, suggesting this isn't a young man's infatuation, but a seasoned heart that knows better yet, can't help itself. Elvis historian Ernst Jorgensen has noted that during this period, Elvis was experiencing his own romantic complications, which may have informed his performance. His marriage to Priscilla had ended, and he was navigating a series of relationships that brought both pleasure and pain. This personal context adds another layer of poignancy to lines like, "I love you so much it hurts me." The production quality of the Stax sessions gives this track a warm, intimate feel. Recorded in Memphis rather than Nashville or Los Angeles, there's a homecoming quality to Elvis's performance, a return to his soulful roots that allows for greater emotional authenticity. Perhaps most devastating is how the song captures the circular nature of unrequited love. There's no resolution, no getting over it, just the ongoing thing that the narrator can't shake. By the song's conclusion, we're left with the sense that this condition might be permanent, a love-shaped scar that will never fully heal. Number 6. You'll Never Walk Alone. 1967. Can a song originally written for a Broadway musical become one of the most heartbreaking ballads in popular music? In Elvis's hands, You'll Never Walk Alone transforms from inspirational anthem to a devastatingly beautiful meditation on loss and endurance. While this Rodgers and Hammerstein composition is often performed as an uplifting piece about perseverance, Elvis's 1967 recording for his gospel album, How Great Thou Art, takes it to emotional depths few other versions have explored. His interpretation suggests someone who has experienced profound heartbreak but is finding the strength to continue. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain. Elvis sings with a vulnerable tremor in his voice that suggests he knows exactly how difficult that walking can be. There's a world weariness in his delivery that transforms the song from generic encouragement to hard-won wisdom. What makes Elvis's version particularly devastating is how it builds. Starting with restrained vocals accompanied by gentle piano, it gradually incorporates the backing singers and orchestra until reaching a climax where Elvis unleashes the full power of his voice. This progression mirrors the emotional journey from isolated grief to finding strength through connection with others. Music critics have noted that Elvis's gospel recordings often contain his most emotionally authentic performances. Freed from commercial expectations and reconnecting with the church music of his youth, Elvis sang these songs with a conviction sometimes missing from his pop recordings of the same era. The historical context adds another layer of poignancy. Recorded in 1967, this song came during a period when Elvis was increasingly dissatisfied with his movie career and seeking greater artistic fulfillment. His turn toward gospel music represented a kind of spiritual homecoming, making his performance of You'll Never Walk Alone feel like a personal testament. Though not specifically about romantic heartbreak, Elvis's interpretation broadens the song to encompass all forms of loss and suffering. When he promises, "You'll never walk alone," there's a compassionate understanding in his voice that could only come from someone who has experienced walking through his own storms. Number 7. For the Good Times, 1973. Is there anything more painful than a gentle, loving breakup? Elvis's version of Chris Christopherson's For the Good Times suggests that sometimes the kindest endings hurt the most. Recorded during his 1973 Stax sessions, Elvis brought his own unique interpretation to this country standard, investing it with a mixture of tenderness and resignation that captures the complex emotions of a relationship's final moments. "Let's just be glad we had some time to spend together," he sings, with a maturity that acknowledges love's impermanence without diminishing its value. What makes Elvis's version particularly heartbreaking is the dignity with which he approaches the material. There's no anger or bitterness in his delivery, just a profound sadness tempered with gratitude for what was shared. His voice occasionally breaks in just the right places, revealing the pain beneath the composed exterior. The arrangement supports this emotional complexity perfectly. Gentle piano and subtle strings create a bittersweet atmosphere, while the rhythm section provides a steady pulse that moves forward inexorably, much like time itself after a relationship ends. The production quality of the Stax sessions gives the recording a warmth and intimacy that makes it feel like Elvis is singing directly to each listener. Elvis biographer Peter Guralnick has suggested that by this point in his career, Elvis had developed a special affinity for songs about loss and parting. His own life had seen numerous endings, his marriage to Priscilla, friendships that had come and gone, and perhaps a growing awareness of his own mortality. These experiences seem to inform his interpretation, giving it an authenticity that more superficial readings of the song might miss. Perhaps most devastating is the song's focus on physical intimacy as a final connection before parting. "Lay your head upon my pillow," Elvis sings with such tenderness that it creates an almost unbearable tension between the pleasure of the moment and the knowledge that it's the last time. Few singers could navigate this emotional terrain with such nuance. The relaxed country soul feel of Elvis's version stands in contrast to the emotional weight of the lyrics, creating a musical experience that mirrors the way we often try to maintain composure while processing profound loss. It's this control, this refusal to descend into melodrama, that makes the heartbreak all the more palpable. Number 8. Always on My Mind. 1972. Have you ever realized too late what you had? Few songs capture the agony of regret like Elvis's version of Always on My Mind, a confession of neglect that remains one of his most emotionally devastating recordings. Recorded in March 1972, just weeks after separating from Priscilla, this song carries the unmistakable weight of Elvis's personal circumstances. "Maybe I didn't hold you all those lonely, lonely times," he sings with a vulnerability that suggests he's working through his own failings in real time. What makes Elvis's interpretation particularly heartbreaking is the tension between the lyrics' admissions of neglect and the care with which he delivers each line. There's a tenderness in his voice that makes the confessions of thoughtlessness even more painful. It's clear the narrator is capable of great love, making his failure to show it all the more tragic. While Always on My Mind has been recorded by numerous artists, with Willie Nelson's version perhaps the most famous, Elvis brings a unique quality of wounded masculinity to the song. His reading suggests a man unaccustomed to emotional vulnerability, suddenly confronting the consequences of his emotional distance. The arrangement supports this feeling perfectly. Restrained yet emotionally rich, the production avoids overwhelming Elvis's vocal with unnecessary flourishes. Instead, it provides a sympathetic backdrop for what feels like an intimate confession. The subtle strings swell at just the right moments to underscore the emotional peaks without becoming manipulative. Elvis historian Ernst Jorgensen has noted that Elvis recorded this song in just a few takes, suggesting an intuitive connection to the material. Given the parallels to his own situation with Priscilla, it's tempting to hear this as Elvis processing his own regrets through music, a form of public therapy that allowed him to express feelings he might have struggled to articulate otherwise. Perhaps most devastating is the song's central irony. The narrator clearly loves deeply, but failed to demonstrate that love when it mattered. "You were always on my mind," he insists, but the admission comes too late to save the relationship. This gap between feeling and expression creates the emotional core of the song's Heartbreak. Number 9. Don't. 1957. Can a young voice know true heartbreak? Don't, recorded when Elvis was only 22, proves that youth is no barrier to profound emotional understanding. Released in 1957, this Leiber and Stoller ballad captures Elvis at his vulnerable best, during his pre-Army career peak. Don't, that's what you say each time that I hold you this way. Elvis sings with a mixture of confusion and hurt that perfectly captures youthful heartbreak. What makes Don't particularly devastating is how it contrasts with the rebel image Elvis was cultivating at the time. Here was the hip-swiveling controversy magnate revealing his tender side, showing the emotional vulnerability beneath the provocative exterior. His vocal performance transitions prosy from fragile falsetto to pleading depth, demonstrating a remarkable emotional range for such a young singer. The arrangement deserves special attention for its restraint. In an era when pop productions often leaned toward the ornate, Don't features a stripped-back approach that highlights Elvis's voice. Gentle backing vocals provide support without distraction, while the minimal instrumentation creates an intimate atmosphere that makes the heartbreak feel immediate and personal. Music historian Colin Scott has suggested that Don't represents the perfect marriage of Elvis's gospel training and pop sensibilities. The emotional honesty of his church background, combined with the polish of commercial production, created a revolutionary approach to pop balladry that would influence generations of singers. Perhaps most impressive is how Elvis navigates the song's emotional landscape. Rather than maintaining a single note of despair, he moves through confusion, pleading, resignation, and determination, sometimes within a single phrase. This emotional complexity elevates Don't above simple teenage heartbreak to something more universally resonant. The song peaked at #1 on the Billboard charts, but has been somewhat overshadowed in Elvis's catalog by his more up-tempo hits from the era. Yet for those looking to understand Elvis's unprecedented impact, Don't provides essential evidence of his ability to communicate emotional truth, a quality that set him apart from many of his contemporaries and successors. Number 10. Love Me. 1956. Can desperation be beautiful? Love Me, from Elvis's breakthrough year of 1956, transforms romantic begging into art with its naked, emotional vulnerability. Often confused with his later hit, Love Me Tender, this Leiber and Stoller composition, originally titled Love Me when recorded by R&B group The Clovers, Shanks's the young Elvis at his most emotionally exposed. Treat me like a fool, treat me mean and cruel, but love me, he pleads, establishing a dynamic of emotional submission that was revolutionary for male performers of the era. What makes Love Me particularly devastating is its unapologetic neediness. At a time when male pop stars typically projected confidence and control, Elvis willingly portrayed a man completely at the mercy of his lover's whims. Wring my faithful heart, tear it all apart, but love me, he sings with a conviction that makes the self-destructive sentiment feel like a profound truth rather than mere melodrama. The arrangement supports this emotional surrender perfectly. Starting with a gentle introduction, the song builds to emotional peaks, where Elvis's voice breaks with feeling before retreating to more controlled passages. This dynamic approach creates an emotional roller coaster that mirrors the instability of desperate love. Elvis historians have noted that this performance represents an early example of his ability to inhabit a song completely regardless of whether he had personally experienced its specific emotional scenario. His interpretive gifts allowed him to convey heartbreak with an authenticity that connected with listeners on a visceral level. Perhaps most interesting about Love Me is how it subverts traditional gender roles of the 1950s. Here was the emerging king of rock and roll, a symbol of rebellious masculinity, openly displaying emotional vulnerability and dependency. This willingness to express traditionally feminine emotional states was part of Elvis's revolutionary impact on popular culture. The song reached #2 on the Billboard charts, but has sometimes been overlooked in discussions of Elvis's greatest heartbreak songs, perhaps because its raw emotion is somewhat disguised by its up-tempo arrangement. Yet, listen closely, and you'll hear one of the most naked expressions of romantic desperation ever committed to record. What is it about heartbreak that inspired such profound performances from Elvis throughout his career? And why do these devastating songs continue to resonate with listeners decades after they were recorded?